Hey, do you ever just wake up one day, look back with everything you see and feel being regrets? Do you look back and feel like that all you've left behind are missed opportunities that you couldn't capitalize on? Perhaps in your mind, if only you did this or that, then maybe, just maybe, your life right now would be somewhere closer to the ideal you think of every night you go to sleep. Or maybe it's the opposite. Is there that one distinct event or experience that you couldn't get out of your head? A time that you failed and it costed you dearly. Something you think about to this day. Something that you yourself know you won't be able to forget or forgive yourself for. Maybe it was an academic opportunity, a crush, a competition, or even a full-blown relationship. I think we all have at least one bad experience that we still think of, a constant reminder of what happens when you fail. The fear from repeating the same mistake and facing the consequences that hurt so much before is a stopping force that affects so many. This video goes out to those who can't move on. As a kid, I was raised to be an overachiever by my parents. Having been naturally gifted at the beginning, there already was an expectation for me to achieve in academics. What's found as seemingly high grades was looked at as normal in their eyes. As I got older, the idea of expectations and having to fulfill them was what filled my head the most. Growing up, my mother especially didn't care about how I felt about her expectations and what she wanted for me. To her, it was an overreaction. To her, it was trivial and she forced me to think the same. How I felt was never considered and that had become my normal. Making friends was easy for me, but maintaining them was difficult. I was an insensitive person with my inability to consider emotions due to how I was raised. I didn't consider how others felt and relied on pure logic without considering for a second to sympathize with their situation. When new people joined our group, I called them replacements, and when a friend's fish died, I told him it was fine and that he could just buy a new one. I lacked the minimum empathy expected of a person. One day, I had made another insensitive remark that touched the nerves of a friend. He, along with other friends who had become fed up with me, lashed out at me. They conveyed their dislike towards me and proceeded to express how they didn't enjoy being my friends. They were my closest friends for so long, so the remark had hurt me a lot. I left the group and proceeded to forcibly improve myself. Their dislike towards me had made me grow a dislike towards myself too. It motivated me to change myself into a person that people would be able to accept. It hurt me to the point I couldn't talk to anyone outside my house for well over a month. In the end, I was able to talk to my friends. They were happy with how I gained a decent personality, and we all lived happily ever after, with the only consequence being that I had become so scared of being viewed negatively by another person. To prevent that, I'd adjust as much as need be to keep people's perceptions of me positive. Whenever I suffer from a similar experience, I'm reminded of the consequences of my actions from that time and my aversion to the previous consequences. Being well reminded of the previous matter kept me stuck in my people-pleasing practices. While understanding what I had become, I didn't see it as a problem since it fundamentally solved the issue I've had years before. I've had a few relationships and situationships. It would always either end in the loss of interest from myself or my partner. Sometimes that would manifest into acts of cheating on their parts or acts of avoidance on mine. I couldn't hold the relationship past 2 months, and my lack of interest would always fail to keep my attention much prior to that. I never saw the effort needed to maintain and grow a relationship to be worth the hassle. I found girls disposable. A little while later, I had ended the most toxic relationship I had ever been in. I was made to adjust to every single thing my partner liked and disliked. While I bent my back over complying to what she wanted, she refused to be open and never tended to any of my needs herself. She was the kind of girl my friends would tell me as long as you're happy, and frankly, looking back, I've wanted an excuse to leave much prior to the day it happened. When the relationship was over, my view of girls and relationships had took a turn for the worse. The normal person would have left, but my innate fear of rejection had become so strong that I'd adjust no matter how much it takes. I met my girlfriend shortly after that breakup. I was skeptical about getting into another relationship given what's happened in the past, but after sleepless nights of talking to each other until we slept, sharing stories, giving our thoughts and ideas and concepts, laughing at each other's jokes, I had found myself smitten. Eventually, we did get together, and my love for her had only grown by the day, even until now. I had never felt so truly comfortable with a person, it felt illegal. It felt good to be loved and to love her. It felt right. For once since that day, I never had to forcibly adjust to the wants and demands of another. She encouraged my sense of self, and I loved her for that. She gave me the personality that I threw away so many years before. The relationship was not without its problems. Else, why would I make a video on this topic? Sometimes I'd feel uncomfortable with something she said or did, but every time I try to tell her, something stops me. It's like a lump in my throat, but it stops me from even telling her through text. This was something I'd suffered for so long. The day I was able to tell her, she had disappeared. She was scared away with the things I said and didn't talk to me for a while. It could be an hour, a day, 3 days, or even close to a week. Sometimes she'd sit in through the entire thing, but other times she would be scared off. She wanted me to be open and encouraged me to talk about it herself. Yet, when I do, she isn't always able to handle it. The act of telling her felt like me trying to assert my own person, to continue what she brought out and consider myself rather than adjusting for the sake of what others wanted. And the consequence of her being scared away made me feel scared too. My fear of rejection was further amplified by my reluctance to hurt her and my fear of losing her love. It stopped me from continuing on, but I'd always do it again when I did have something to say. Despite the means, it is like I was fighting back against the fear of rejection. I was once again trying to realize my own person after she provided me a space to when we had first gotten together. Fighting the urge to back off, pretend everything was okay, and to change myself according to a person's standards had made me realize that while it had helped me years before, it was a problem now. I was still stuck in the past even 4 years after. The slightest hint of rejection from the girl I love sent me all the way back to that one day. The events played like a movie in my head, and the consequences from before scared me too much to even give me time to reconsider my choices. My fear of rejection, my fear of failure towards interpersonal relationships had prevented me from being my own person, to pursue the things I wanted, to give my all for things that matter, and to grow and maintain genuine relationships, and to lastly also acknowledge myself and my needs. My relationship with her had forced me to look my fear of failure in the eye. Unlike my previous relationships with other girls and even friends, I was forced to care. I loved her too much to let go. I was made to acknowledge and respect the problems I had, but put aside time and time again. To me, leaving it would mean risking the relationship and my sense of self. To be scared of failure meant to be scared of the growth that comes after. To continue on would mean that the relationship I had with her wouldn't be able to grow and become stale over time, and I didn't want that. Normally, whenever you see videos like these, you'd end up seeing a happy conclusion in the end. The protagonist faces their problems, fights back, and triumphs despite unfavored chances. In this case, I fight my own fear of failure, win and live happily ever after. But that isn't what happened, and that is also not what this is about. While I haven't lost, I continue to fight against it to this day. Eventually, my girlfriend had stopped disappearing, staying with me most especially when I was vulnerable, and I've grown to be comfortable being my own person, but still being unable to consider myself and my wants over others. I'm still scared of failure and being unable to meet expectations. My fear of being disliked by even a complete stranger is still alive and present, but while it may all still be there, I've acknowledged it and began to act. I've learned to accept that while my fear of failure has carried me through tough times, having too much of it isn't good. Being able to acknowledge and digest that had allowed me to start moving towards a solution. Slowly but surely, I won't be affected by that day. I'm making this video to tell you who's suffering from something similar that you're not alone. I want to impart and convey that the worst thing you can do isn't to fail to win against your fear, but to do nothing about it and let it control you. Take time to learn about yourself and whatever fear you may have. What does it respond to? What is it that truly scares you? What triggers it? Give yourself the time to reflect and understand yourself rather than setting it aside and allowing it to hold you back. Put in the time and effort to slowly become comfortable with what it is you find scary. No matter how small, even the slightest amount of progress is still progress. Progress is never lost unless you keep trying with consistency and the will to be better. Eventually, you will reach the end goal. If there was a way to rid someone of their fear of failure that would work for all, I tell you now. But everyone is scared of different things, and we all have different lives and circumstances. Ultimately, the only one who can help yourself is you.